Cave exploration is humanity's oldest adventure, a journey into Earth's hidden chambers where wonder waits in the darkness. But for some explorers, those chambers become torture devices carved from stone. International cave rescue data shows that 1 in every 2,800 cavers will experience a life-threatening emergency underground, with 23% of those incidents resulting in death. Medical examiners report that cave deaths are among the most prolonged and psychologically traumatic on record, with victims often surviving for days in conditions that slowly destroy both body and mind. From a medical student who spent 27 hours wedged upside down while rescuers watched helplessly, his heart finally stopping from the strain of inverted blood flow, to a diver who survived 3 weeks in an air pocket, slowly starving in total darkness while scratching final messages into rock, to 6 experienced cavers who drowned in minutes when surface rain turned their crawlway into a high-pressure burial chamber. But first, the Oxford student who suffocated in a vertical corkscrew while rescuers touched his body, their own breathing poisoning the air that could have saved him. These weren't exploration accidents. They were lessons in how stone and water can transform adventure into prolonged execution. March 1959 brought perfect caving conditions to the French Alps near Grenoble. The Gouffre Berger, one of the world's deepest-known cave systems at the time, beckoned to serious explorers like Neil Moss. The 20-year-old Oxford undergraduate was no novice. His credentials with the Oxford University Caving Club marked him as an accomplished explorer eager to push boundaries. The Berger represented the ultimate challenge with its extreme depth and technical vertical passages. Moss was confident, perhaps excessively so, believing his slim physique would carry him through spaces that stopped others. This confidence led to his fatal decision, attempting to navigate a narrow, vertical corkscrew passage despite increasingly restrictive dimensions. As the passage tightened, Moss became wedged in the vertical shaft, trapped in a position that compromised his breathing. The rescue team arrived quickly, an almost miraculous response time considering the remote location. They could touch him, speak to him, but couldn't extract him from the stone grip that held him fast. The true horror of Moss's situation wasn't the physical entrapment, but the invisible killer surrounding him. In the confined vertical space, air circulation ceased entirely. His panicked breathing depleted oxygen while producing carbon dioxide that had nowhere to go. Each rescuer who approached added more exhaled CO2 to the deadly cocktail. The very people trying to save him were unknowingly poisoning his air supply. For nearly 2 days, Moss endured slow chemical asphyxiation while rescuers touched his body but couldn't pull him free. His consciousness faded as carbon dioxide levels rose beyond survivable limits. The cruelest irony? He died not from injuries or even from being crushed, but from breathing air poisoned by the rescue effort itself. After his death, extraction proved impossible. The cave became his permanent resting place, sealed off as a tomb. Neil Moss taught the caving world a brutal lesson. Sometimes the very act of rescue creates the conditions for death, and proximity means nothing without proper airflow. In the wrong geological configuration, air itself becomes a weapon. November the 24th, 2009. Thanksgiving week in Utah. The Nutty Putty Cave was a popular recreational site attracting families and casual explorers to its relatively accessible passages. But what began as a holiday adventure for John Edward Jones would become one of caving's most infamous tragedies. Jones, a 26-year-old medical student and father to a young daughter, had been caving since childhood. He understood the physics of tight spaces and, more importantly, understood human physiology. His medical training would prove a terrible burden, giving him precise knowledge of exactly how his body was failing during his ordeal. The fatal error came when Jones mistook an unmapped fissure for the familiar birth canal passage he'd navigated years before. He crawled headfirst into the opening, just 10 inches wide and 18 inches tall, believing he could always reverse if needed. As the passage narrowed beyond safe limits, Jones pushed forward until movement in either direction became impossible. The position was nightmarish from a medical perspective. Wedged upside down at a 70-degree angle, 125 feet below the surface, Jones's arms were pinned uselessly against his sides. Blood pooled in his head as his cardiovascular system fought against gravity with each heartbeat. His medical knowledge became psychological torture. He understood exactly how inversion stress was damaging his body systems. Over the next 27 hours, more than 100 rescuers worked frantically to free him. Using a complex pulley system, they briefly managed to extract him a few inches, enough for him to speak with his wife via radio, creating momentary hope. Then came the devastating failure. The pulley anchor gave way, dropping him even deeper into the crevice, beyond any possibility of extraction. Jones's death certificate would list cardiac arrest as cause of death, but the truth was more complex. His heart had fought a 27-hour battle against gravity until it simply couldn't continue. The medical student died understanding exactly what was happening to him, unable to apply his knowledge to save himself. After his death, authorities made the difficult decision to seal Nutty Putty Cave permanently with concrete, entombing Jones forever in the space that killed him. His case demonstrates how even medical knowledge cannot overcome the implacable physics of stone, and how rescue can sometimes create false hope before inevitable failure. March 1984. The limestone labyrinth of Sterkfontein Caves near Johannesburg presented a deadly challenge to cave divers. Among them was Peter Verhulsel, an experienced but notoriously reckless explorer who routinely ignored safety protocols that might have saved his life. The Sterkfontein system was infamous for disorienting even expert divers with its multiple identical passages and alternating water-filled and air-filled chambers. Most divers meticulously used safety lines to mark their routes. Verhulsel, confident to the point of arrogance, chose to navigate by instinct alone. His fatal decision came when he entered the maze without proper guidelines, trusting his experience over established safety procedures. In the crystal-clear water, visibility wasn't the problem. It was the identical appearance of dozens of limestone passages that created the deadly confusion. Verhulsel became hopelessly lost in the underwater maze. As his oxygen supply dwindled, he frantically searched for an exit, eventually surfacing in a small air pocket, temporary salvation from immediate drowning, but the beginning of a far more prolonged torment. The true horror of Verhulsel's situation soon became apparent. Rescue teams were searching the water passages below, completely unaware of the air chamber where he had surfaced. No one would think to look for him there. No one would hear his cries. Alone in absolute darkness, with no food and limited drinking water from condensation on the walls, Verhulsel began the agonizing process of waiting for rescue that wouldn't come. As days turned to weeks, he started scratching messages into the rock and sand. Final thoughts, regrets, and warnings to future explorers. Verhulsel survived an astonishing 3 weeks in that air pocket, his body slowly consuming itself for sustenance. The autopsy would later reveal the extent of his suffering. Severe dehydration, starvation, and hypothermia all contributed to his eventual death. When recovery teams finally discovered his body on a rock ledge, they found the walls covered with his final communications, desperate pleas and warnings scratched into stone. His death proved that survival can be more brutal than quick death. The psychological torture of isolation, combined with slow starvation, created a prolonged execution that lasted weeks rather than minutes. His final messages, carved in desperation, became his only legacy. Warnings from beyond the grave about the consequences of overconfidence. June 24, 1967. The Yorkshire Dales presented perfect weather for underground exploration. 6 experienced cavers, Dave Adamson, Jeff Boiro, Bill Frakes, John Ogden, Michael Ryan and Colin Vickers, set out to tackle Mossdale Caverns, a system notorious for its technical difficulty and tight crawlways. All 6 men were skilled veterans familiar with challenging cave systems. Their target was the Far Marathon section, an extremely difficult passage requiring advanced technique and endurance. With clear skies overhead and no rain in the forecast, conditions seemed ideal for their ambitious exploration. Their fatal decision was entering a flood-prone system during a meteorologically unstable period. Though the surface appeared calm, the cavers failed to account for the unpredictable summer weather patterns common to the Yorkshire Dales. They pushed deep into narrow crawlways, ignoring environmental warning signs that experienced cavers should have recognized. Without warning, a torrential rainstorm struck the surface. The beck outside the cave entrance swelled rapidly, funneling water into the system with unstoppable hydraulic force. Inside, the 6 men were navigating passages so narrow they had to crawl on their stomachs with barely inches of clearance above their backs. The moment of realization must have been terrifying. Water began rising in the crawlways faster than escape was possible. In passages too tight to turn around, the men were forced to continue forward against an increasingly powerful current. The narrow dimensions prevented them from lifting their heads above the rising water level. What followed wasn't simple drowning. The flood carried rocks and debris, essentially burying the cavers under material while simultaneously drowning them. Death came not just from water but from liquid burial, trapped under debris in absolute darkness with no possible escape. The aftermath became the deadliest caving disaster in British history. It took days just to pump enough water out of the system to locate their remains. The recovery operation was traumatic even for experienced rescue teams, who found the bodies not simply drowned, but entombed in mud and rock. The Mossdale 6 taught the caving world that surface weather controls underground fate with merciless efficiency. Their deaths led to permanent changes in UK cave weather safety protocols. The site became a somber memorial to how quickly nature can transform adventure into mass casualty, proving that experience means nothing when water decides to reclaim its underground domain. October 2014. In the frozen depths of a Norwegian cave system, 5 Finnish technical divers prepared for an extreme challenge. Plura Cave was known for its crushing depths, exceeding 100 meters and near-freezing water temperatures of just 4 degrees Celsius. These were conditions that left zero margin for error. All 5 were close friends and experienced technical cave divers accustomed to pushing boundaries. Their planned traverse through the deepest sections would require precise gas management and perfect execution. Despite the known risks, their confidence in their collective abilities led them forward. The fatal sequence began when Jari Usimaki panicked at depth and became entangled in his own equipment. His diving partner, Kai Jackie Czech, made the fateful decision to attempt rescue rather than seeking surface help. Both men chose to fight their situation rather than abort the dive, a decision that would prove catastrophic. As Usimaki's panic worsened, his entanglement became more severe. Czech's rescue attempt only led to him becoming trapped in the same situation. Both divers began drowning at a depth where immediate rescue was physically impossible due to decompression requirements. The remaining 3 divers faced the most horrific choice imaginable: attempt rescue and likely die themselves, or save their own lives by abandoning their friends. In the crushing pressure of the deep cave, they could see their friends drowning just meters away, but intervening meant certain death for all. They made the impossible choice to abandon their dying friends and begin the hours-long decompression process necessary to reach the surface alive. This meant swimming past the bodies of their friends repeatedly during their slow ascent, watching as the men they had trained with and trusted became lifeless in the frigid water. The survivors spent hours decompressing in freezing conditions, the bodies of their friends floating nearby, a psychological torture that would leave permanent scars. When they finally reached the surface, authorities deemed official recovery too dangerous and refused to retrieve the bodies. In a final act of loyalty, the survivors organized a secret, illegal recovery mission weeks later. They returned to the exact spot where their friends had died, risking their own lives to bring the bodies home for proper burial. The psychological trauma of witnessing the prolonged deaths underwater, combined with the guilt of necessary abandonment, created wounds that would never fully heal. Their experience demonstrates perhaps the cruelest lesson of all. Sometimes friendship means watching loved ones die to save yourself. The brutality of choice between loyalty and survival represents a unique form of torture that continues long after the physical ordeal ends. 5 cavers, 5 systems, 5 demonstrations of how the Earth can transform exploration into extended torture. From the Oxford student who suffocated on poisoned air while rescuers touched his body, to the medical student whose heart finally stopped after 27 hours of fighting gravity, these stories share a common thread. The underground doesn't kill quickly. The warning signs are not suggestions. The safety protocols are not guidelines. They are the difference between adventure and agony. So the next time you see a cave entrance, remember these stories. Remember Neil Moss, who died breathing poison while help was inches away. Remember John Jones, whose tomb is made of concrete and limestone. Remember Peter Verhulsel, who carved his final words while slowly starving. Caves don't just kill explorers, they torture them first with geological patience and stone-cold precision. Every passage is a potential execution chamber, and the Earth keeps detailed records of every mistake. Which of these stories did you find the most brutal? Let us know in the comments below. And if you appreciate our deep dives into these underground tragedies, make sure to like this video and subscribe to Final Moments. Until next time, stay on the surface.